In the systems of both the Autonomists and the Consequentialists, all phenomena similarly are similar in that they are posited, not similarly posited, but similar in a sense. It would be similar in that. But all it says in Tibetan is similarly posited. But what this means is similar in that they are posited through the force of appearing to non-defective awareness. Non-defective in the sense that the awareness is not affected, I think it means here, affected by superficial problems. Like, you're in a train and it looks as if the trees are moving, not that you're moving in the train. For instance, sometimes it looks like that. But the way they're posited differs. It's posited, set up. The consequentialists assert that although a snake does not exist in, the Tibetan is on, a mottled rope, multicolored rope. We're thinking about a multicolored snake, not a black snake, as was said last time. It is posited as a snake, right? Your posited is so, you asked last time, so mundane a meaning that you don't want to, it's a snake. It's put there as a snake by your mind, by your awareness, apprehending a multicolored rope as a snake. Sometimes when I'd step outside my house in Virginia, where there'd be a coiled, not a rope, but a hose there, I'd think there was a black snake there, right? So that mind that was seeing it as a snake would be the mind that's positing it, setting it up as a snake. And similarly, although all phenomena don't exist within, since it's the same word in the object, but I wanted to use a different word, within the object, they exist as merely put there by the awareness, put. Maybe this is a bit like a scientific article that uses words that get in the way, uses more academic words that are in the hoity-toity academic vocabulary, and the hoity-toity academic vocabulary that's not coming from me, Hopkins, but it's coming from the hoity-toity world of academia, which gets in the way of your thinking, and you don't know how to think about it. It's put there by the awareness, right? When I step out of my house, my own mind is putting a snake there, is positing a snake there. And you have to get beyond the hoity-toity academics. And of course we have hoity-toity academics in Tibet. And you got to get used to their vocabulary. The Autonomists, I'm trying to think of what Thurman calls the Autonomists. What is it called? Does anybody know? Anyway, he's got some fancy word. And of course, I've got one that sticks more with the Tibetan word, and he's got one that wants to put it into Western academic vocabulary. What does he say? Anyway, but he's got a good purpose in mind, so that it will reflect on what all of us who have been in academia might be able to draw in our background and put some meaning on it. And autonomy. Hopkins is trying to stick with the Tibetan etymology. Own rangwang, own power, autonomy. The own powerists, the own powerists. And he didn't want to be that awkward, so he said, those who hold to autonomy. Well, those who hold to autonomy might be called autonomists, which then made it too awkward, maybe, so he couldn't think about it. The autonomists say, even though he's trying to be folksy, what?
He says dogmaticist.
Dogmaticist. Which...
And dialect. Yes.
Yes. Dialecticians. So yes. I think that would work for all of the schools. So I think, But anyway, the autonomists say, so consequentialists, but then you see Tengywa, and it turns out that all of the schools, all of the 4 schools, use consequences when they debate. Turns out all of them do. But this name, consequence, those who use consequences, that's literal. So, consequentialists. And then that gives you, in fact, the wrong idea. But prasangika, that's what prasangika means. So Hopkins is a literalist. With Hopkins, consequentialists, because he's being a literalist, and prasangika, prasanga means consequence. Telgyowa, in Tibetan, consequence. So then you got to talk with Hopkins, and he says, yeah, that's the literal translation, but you got to know that according to all 4 schools, when you debate, you're supposed to begin with a consequence that breaks down the pointedness or the vibrancy of the opponent's view. Okay? It follows that your body is not a dependent arising. And you see all 4 schools accept dependent arising. It absurdly follows that your body is not a dependent arising. Shock! What do you mean it follows my body's not a dependent arising? I'm a Buddhist. My body must be a dependent arising. So you see, if you meditate that way, it follows that my body is not a dependent arising. Why? Because it exists under its own power. No. And you challenge yourself this way. You see, you use the debating format against yourself in meditation. So the English is as bad as the Sanskrit and the Tibetan. So that's Hopkins' theory. It means you've got to study some, get some background. Apprehending a multicolored rope as a snake is mistaken. Since it's mistaken, a snake as put there by this consciousness is not established by way of its own character. Oh, yeah, true. But in general, since the consciousness perceiving a snake is unmistaken, not mistaken, a snake is put there by it, right, as confirmed by it, must be an interesting change of meaning I gave posited, must be established by way of its own character. You can see their logic. A snake is confirmed by it, must be, or set up by it, must be established by way of its own character. Because if it wasn't, a snake would be unfindable. Wow, it's like you're being trapped by this, or maybe not trapped, or maybe this is what's right. This is what makes sense. But when the object imputed is sought, an illustration of a snake, that means something that is a snake, is found within its aggregates. So within its aggregates here means the collection of its aggregates, the collection of the parts of a snake, and that pumber sape, that's fine within its aggregates, pumber sape. And the within that was used up above was really the on. Now then, the next bullet is going to be the really hard one. The consequentialist view. So then, why are they called consequentialists? If all of the schools say that if you're, in beginning the process of debate, or you've got to knock down the opponent really is yourself, but, in external debate also, you've got to knock down the other person's, if I think you've got some idea, I've got to, really? Do I really have to hit you? Make you, I told you the story of going to the University of Virginia medical school's noon hour, in which they showed a slide of a smoker's tissue that had turned black. And I went with Dr. Durden. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's lung tissue. It turned out, and the doctor was very clever. He showed the tissue. Yeah, and we're all sitting there. And then he said, that's heart tissue. That was black with smoke. Wow. A smoker's smoke. And it hit me. You see? Lung tissue black. Oh, that's okay. It didn't hit me. Heart tissue black. Now, I was not a smoker. I'd have an occasional cigar. Not at a faculty meeting or anything like that, but up in the woods, Vermont, Canada, whatever. Where you get hit, where it comes through, where it gets through. That's why I say this process of reasoning is affective. emotions. It's not some sort of cold. You put together the facts. And that's why this Structure of Scientific Revolutions, that book by the author whose name I almost always forget, he talks about how it's a revolution. Revolution means not evolution. Scientists also work, in their work, it's by the slow accumulation of evidence. And while he's a scientist, while the slow accumulation of evidence occurs, the scientists are holding to their old views. And then there's a revolution where the weight is sufficient, and and the weight is like the straw that broke the camel's back, where there's enough straws accumulate and the camel collapses. And another religion scholar, very famous guy, who's Hans Kuhn, and that was Stephen Kuhn, Kuhn, of the scientist. The name came to me, Structure of the Scientific Revolutions. And Hans Kuhn applied it to religion, where the old view is held on, and the accumulation of evidence then finally, just like the black heart, smoky black heart. Okay, in response to this, so we're the same. Not that it couldn't happen quickly. But sudden enlightenment doesn't necessarily happen quickly. His Sambo pointed this out. And he kept trying with me. With a certain stanza. He kept trying. I'm still waiting for it to. In response to this, the consequentialists assert that although the two, consciousness of a multicolored rope as a snake and consciousness apprehending a live snake as a snake, they do not differ with respect to being mistaken or unmistaken. Both are mistaken in that the object appears to inherently exist. Mistaken with respect to the appearing object, but not mistake. One of them is mistaken, right? Because the coiled black in my case, the black hose is not a snake. And the black snake that crawled out from under my hot tub in Virginia on the other side of the house was a snake. Nevertheless, a consciousness apprehending a multicolored rope as a snake has no valid cognition backing it up. And such is not renowned as a snake in the world, due to which such a snake is non-existent. Right? That ain't a snake. I saw it as a snake. And my mistaken mind put it as a snake, posited it as a snake, set it up as a snake, and also is established by conventional valid cognition. Whereas a live snake is established, right? Is confirmed by conventional. Established so often means confirmed, right? And furthermore is not damaged by a rational consciousness analyzing the ultimate. Rational has some, advantages in that it's being emphasized that this comes from reasoning, that it's rational. And it's not some other well, okay, I said it. Due to which it is existent. Hence, it is asserted that also whatsoever conventional phenomena must rely on a full complement of all three of these features. Now, the three are listed by the present Dalai Lama in the key to the middle way, key to the middle or middle way. Way here means not middle path, but the middle way things are. That's His Holiness's own justification for calling it middle way. Middle way could mean middle path, but he in English justified the term middle way as middle way things are. This was not with regard to this text, but an early conversation that we had. So, I think you understand these three. I don't need to read the English to you. I'm joking. As if you have difficulty reading English. An enunciation lesson, like Mrs. Slack, whom I used to meet with on Sunday mornings, who taught me enunciation, which was a guise for helping me get over stuttering, teaching me not to stutter. I don't know if I stuttered when she was teaching me enunciation. So in the paragraph below that, so those three repeat what was said above those three. So a consciousness apprehending or conceiving, either way, inherent existence exists. So you can't claim it doesn't exist. But the way you weaken it is to show that its object doesn't exist. If somebody really likes smoking, you undermine the virtues of smoking, the good qualities of smoking. You know, smoking, you take in the drag. You know, vaping. You know, when you look at people vaping, I don't know if I've ever seen a person vaping except on television. I mean, that vape is, you know, the drag in. You can tell how great the drag in is by watching the exhalation. The exhalation is huge, huge. And so then you watch the inhalation, and it's... And when I watch the inhalation of smoking pot, I don't think the inhalation gives you the pleasure of vaping in. You know, it's just to get fill it for the value of what's in the lungs. You know, it's work. I guess. The only times I've inhaled pot smoke was when I inhaled it in the hot air system, and which was just being in a house where people were smoking pot, and I was just inhaling normally, and then would become stupid and not. When I was doing my Sanskrit, I'd feel, oh, I'm dumb. I don't like this. I enjoy being smart. I like intelligence. And I figured the guys who were, this was the time I did my Sanskrit was around 9 p.m. and that's when they were smoking. I tried to figure out what it was, and it took me some time to figure it out. I figured I'm not getting tired at 9 p.m. Nowadays I am. I can't work at night. So you undermine, so it's difficult to undermine the belief in something. When I went to New York and would see the buildings on the West Side Highway that had Trump on them, I think, wow, that guy must really be rich. That guy must really know what he's doing. It took a while to figure out that Trump didn't know what he was doing. By the way you weaken a consciousness is such as a consciousness believing in inherent existence is to undermine the object, like undermining a consciousness that believes in the good qualities of smoking or, activities like that. And some of these afflictive emotions, and you see there's a famous psychologist who has criticized me for calling ignorance an emotion. And Chandrakirti puts conceptual consciousnesses, he calls them movements of the mind, motion. And so I get being a literalist, I look for a literal backup there. And then the process of meditation and the difficulty, where the difficulty of getting rid of, overcoming the pointedness and vibrancy of our wrong ideas. I think it's fine to call the Sanskrit word kleshas, afflictive emotions, these disturbances, emotions, afflictive emotions. But although I met him and I know the person that he's talking about when he criticizes the translation as afflictive emotions. Of course, it's me. It is I. But I've not bothered to respond because I know the context of his criticism, which is that he's thinking of the ordinary categories of the English language. Therefore, it says in the middle of the second paragraph, a rational consciousness analyzing the ultimate does not reveal that a consciousness apprehending inherent existence doesn't exist. It does exist, and it's very powerful, and its existence is confirmed by valid cognition. So confirming that a consciousness exists and confirming by valid cognition that it exists doesn't give it the right to continue to exist.